Hello, everyone. I am Collean O'Brien. This is Keryn S Lee. We are the Two Unholy Healers, and welcome to yet another episode. Thank you so much for all of you who are joining us live, as well as those of you who listen to the replays. We appreciate your being here. Thank you so much. So today, what is today's episode? We are talking about modern medicine and energy healing. So, yeah, this was a topic that when I proposed to Keryn 2 weeks ago, I forget exactly how long ago it was, but you really were like, ooh, like it really just lit you up when I mentioned it. So yeah. Is there what lit you up about it?
Well, first of all, hello everyone. Thank you for being here.
Hi, we see that you're here. And do tell us hello in the comments as well. Let us know you're here, who you are. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
So one of the things that lit me up about that was I feel like where we are at the moment. In fact, I even wrote it in the, I think it was the introduction of my book, that it's really like kind of a bit of a personal mission to actually see energy healing and modern medicine working together, and also for energy medicine to be seen as a viable contribution and a valuable contribution to healthcare in our society. Good morning, Catherine. Lovely to have you here. This is really important to me because it's so interesting that we began with roots in traditional medicine. Recipes for, mum's recipe for a cold, or, chicken soup, or, going back even further to more traditional and indigenous healing, herbs, medicine women, the shamans, all of this stuff, even going way back even further into civilizations beyond, all had their own method of healing that it had nothing to do with modern medicine and science. But gradually over time, that has evolved and been brought into a structure and a framework that has some benefits, enables people to learn a structured approach. It keeps people on a similar track, so that when you go to a doctor, you basically know what you're getting. There's not a lot of surprises. So if you go to see a chiropractor, you know what you're going to get. If you go to see a GP, you know basically what you're going to get. If you go to see a naturopath, you know what I mean? Like each one has its own kind of framework. So it creates that structure, which is great in a world where there is so much to choose from. But what it did was it also kind of brought in a lot of limitation and a lack of trust for things that weren't necessarily proven by science. And of course, when there is money behind these things, there is always a bit of an agenda about what actually works and what doesn't, and where the funding goes for studies and stuff like that. So now it feels like we have this whole turnaround happening. It's like we've dived right down the rabbit hole in terms of finding out how bodies work and what nutrients we need, and, how to heal this or fix that, or what causes this and what causes that, which is brilliant for us to know all this information. But now we're starting to open up because we're realizing that modern medicine can't fix everything. We need to have a more holistic approach. We cannot focus just on a reductionist approach, a singular body part or a singular issue. We have to be able to take the whole person into account. And that's where we have more alternative and holistic practitioners coming in. And of course, energy healing, where we really do tune into the energy, even back to past lives, and soul agreements, and absolutely anything at all that could be contributing to this person's illness or condition. So I just love the fact that we are seeing a society where there is more of this balance starting to happen. It's very slow, and it's also perhaps segmented portions of the community. There's definitely still a lot of people who would not have this opinion, but I'm excited to see it expanding, and I'd love to see where it is in the next 10 to 20 years in terms of more integration between the two.
Yeah, and if you take an historical perspective, it might not even take that long, right? Like if you look at the history of medicine in particular, I was really astonished when I looked up that germ theory was discovered in the 1860s.
Wow.
And it wasn't really universally adopted until the 1890s. So like that just blows my mind. I mean, not that, there wasn't necessarily, an understanding of, something that we would call germs, but in terms of it, being discovered, and then being accepted, because of course you do kind of have to wait for almost a whole generation of the old guard to die out before the new thing can really kind of take root and become the new norm or the new accepted thing. So but that's not that long ago. Like that's the late 19th century, and we're only in the early 21st century. So it's it might not take that long for things to really shift and change in the way that you're describing, Keryn. So, but I do want to mention now. Some of our viewers already know this, but that I want to make sure that I'm on the record and say that I do have an inherent bias here, because I have both my undergraduate and graduate degrees in science. And I do have a history of working as a standardized patient training medical students. So, I do have, a bias towards modern medicine, the way that medicine is practiced, at least in the Western world. But I'm also a certified theta healer. And I have been a theta healer for 5 or 6 years now. I had been interested in other things prior to that. So it is possible to live in both worlds and to draw from both worlds, right? Like if I'm in a car accident or I need something, like I'm definitely going to the hospital, and they're definitely going to be using, medicine and life-saving techniques and whatnot. But I'm not going to discount one or and that's where I think the problem is, where people think they have to choose and they have to be mutually exclusive, and they don't. They absolutely don't. Unfortunately, so I don't know about you, Keryn, but I know for me and for some of the people that I work with, the whole driving force for them even exploring what we would call alternative medicine, which is kind of funny because it, as you were describing in the history of medicine, it used to be that was the thing. That was
just
all that
healing.
was available. Right, exactly.
Or just medicine.
Right. So is because, on a personal level, they felt like let down by the modern medical world, right? And it's something didn't work for them, or they had a bad experience. And so they start exploring for something more. They want different relief. They want a different experience. And, it sort of drives you to, when you almost have nothing to lose, well, I'll try anything. So, that can sort of lead to, okay, like I was let down before, never again. I'm not going back down that route. I'm not going to trust them again. I'm not going to be vulnerable to that again. And that can be really, really dangerous, particularly if your life depends on it, because modern medicine is really good at keeping your body and material stuff working, right? Hello, we got somebody from the Philippines. Thank you so much. Hello, glad that you're here. Thank you, Ma. Where was I going with this? So it sometimes it comes down to this materialism versus spiritualism approach, right? That the energy healing is really about the spiritual side, or that non-physical side, and medicine is really just about like, hey, let's fix the symptoms, let's worry about the physical stuff, and don't worry so much about the mental, emotional things. Whereas when you can address both and address that whole person, and that's where you get that holistic WHOLE, with the whole person, that people can really thrive, and you're worried about, well, not worried, but you're striving more towards wellness rather than, okay, let's just fix all the sick people. Like, what if everybody was so well, we didn't really have to get ill? Like, you could prevent those symptoms before they even occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I also love when we see the two working together. So, I have many clients who are undergoing treatment for different things. And what we do is work together to facilitate those changes more easily. We help to shift belief systems around whatever that illness is. If there is surgery or anything like that is required, we can use energy healing to have more ease with that. There's been times when I know that we can literally heal something using the theta healing, but that person has said, you know what, if I did that, my family wouldn't understand. And so one lady in particular just says, let's just make this as much ease as possible, help me and support me through this, but so that my family is also understanding of what's going on, especially because she has medical professionals in her family. So what we do is make it an easier journey for her, respecting her wishes and what her family requires. So, that's just one example of how the two can work together.
Yeah, and that is a great point, because theta healing is permission based, right? And yeah, miracles are possible. I'm sure that client believes that she could have been completely healed, but she wasn't quite ready for how that was going to change her relationships. And that's so that's gorgeous, right? Like we'll witness to whatever level of healing that you want. And I think it's an important thing to mention here too, because I know Vianna mentions it in some of her book. I think she actually even mentions it in the first book, that sometimes death is the healing. Right? Like we sometimes, some modern, doctors and some of us as healers, whether it's an ego thing or whether it's just from experience, like we feel like we can fix everything. We can heal everybody. And, it can be really devastating if, that fails. And really, it's never a failure, right? It sometimes that transition is exactly the healing that was required. But it's hard for us as humans, as people who want to because life is really, really good at staying alive.
So not everybody wants to heal. Not everybody, sometimes it's just they're ready to leave. So we have to respect that,
Right. And it reminds me of a friend of mine who does pranic healing. She had actually posted today on social media, and I'm paraphrasing here, so forgive me if I'm not getting the exact quote, was that, some people don't want to heal, right? And she didn't use the word victim mode, but yeah, some people just really get an awful lot out of staying the victim. And like you can't heal somebody who's not ready to heal. They have to really be, a component, a cooperative component for it. So
it's serving them in some way, whatever that may be, and it's not up to us to figure that out. And what you were saying earlier about, in certain situations, you're definitely going to head to the hospital or something first. Just reminds me, my son, one of his friends a couple of days ago, like 6 o'clock in the morning or something, apparently fell over, bashed his head. We're not sure. He had a seizure. It was bleeding from the brain. So we're not sure in what order all of that happened, but obviously that was pretty intense. He was rushed to the hospital. He stopped breathing at some point. Like, it was very full on. And he now is posting photos in his group with his friends with this massive scar down his head, like all just stapled up. It's just, ugh. And
but chicks love scars like that. He's gonna
right? But this is definitely a situation where you're going to call 911. Now, yes, if you're not too much in freak out mode yourself, especially if it's your own child, to actually do some healing while they're waiting, to ask Creator to help, stem the flow of blood, to help settle everything, whatever is required. But you're still going to want that ambulance there. You're still going to want someone to put those stitches in and stitch that up, because you might be able to do it with healing if you're really damn good, but that would take a lot of letting go of some very, very limiting belief systems in what is actually possible in terms of healing. And both
also, for the healer as well as the client.
Exactly. And sometimes it's just easier and quicker, especially where we are in terms of society and consciousness now, to actually just get the thing stitched up and then facilitate the support of that healing process with with your healing or whatever. So there's definitely situations. And something that fascinates me too is, having done being still in process of doing a Bachelor of Health Science, I really was fascinated by the history of healing and a lot of things we learned about medicine and all of that as we've been going through the course. And one of the things was about when they first sort of started cutting the body open to learn about the anatomy and how the body works, that was actually banned. Like it was sort of, it was a bad thing to cut someone's body open, and it was, illegal in certain areas. And then at some point, I think as the more institutions for medicine started to spring up, there were places where that was allowed. But can you imagine what it was like for that first person that actually is like, man, let's just cut this body open and see what's going on here? Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many aspects of healing that is just, it's so astounding, the process that humanity has been through in terms of discovering about our own bodies and where we still have to go, because I still think there's so much more, and modern medicine definitely helps us do that. But I know for myself, I would not be without especially energy healing, but especially theta healing, because that just is gold and has changed so much for me and my family, my clients, and everyone. So being able to do the two is definitely a bonus.
Yes. Yeah. And I think this was sort of how we got our topic for our last one was, if I thought back to what my life was like, right when I was starting theta healing, or even, before I started theta healing, I was like, wow, like I have really changed an awful lot. This literally has changed my life. But you don't always get that perspective when you're just living in that day to day. Like you really kind of have to broaden your timeline and compare. So yeah, it is quite fascinating. But at this point in time in human development, we still have bodies. So having, I don't care if you want to call them a mechanic for your body, but that is very much what modern medicine does. Yeah. I wish, at least in the United States, that you could just get like a quote for how much it's going to cost you to get that repair up front, like you do when you take your car in. But, and
a guarantee that it gets done, because, anything could happen.
Well, and that's the other thing too. We're not cars. Biology, it's such a dynamic, changeable thing that, what works for one person may not necessarily work for another. And so even when they have, these broad studies where they've got enough participants to be statistically significant, there's always going to be outliers and anomalies. And at the end of the day, we are each individuals. And so, and that's where the rubber meets the road, is when that physician or when that healthcare provider is, working with that patient. Or similarly, when we are an energy healer, when we are working one-on-one, or even if we're doing a group healing, it's how does that hit the individual? And we are changing in every moment of every day. Like, even though we have physical bodies, we are quantum, when you go down to the atomic and subatomic level. So we are, it's a system that is in constant flux.
Exactly.
And so it's, and even, I don't know if you remember when we took our instructors for theta healing with Joshua Steibel, who is Vienna Steibel's son, Vienna Steibel being the founder of theta healing. He talked about the shelf of unexplainable things. That every now and again, there's just something like, I can't explain that. It's a thing. It happened, but I can't explain that. So we'll just put that on the shelf of unexplainable things. There is a shelf of unexplainable things in modern medicine as well. Like every now and again, like, something goes in remission, they do a test, and then they're like, oh, it's gone. We don't know why. So stuff happens in medicine as well, that they're just like, you know what? Like, you're well. I don't know why you're well. I hate that I can't take credit for why you're being well, but you are well.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. And there are, thank God there are doctors who do, at least not necessarily believe in miracles, but will acknowledge that miracles are possible. When I was working as a standardized patient there, I can't really discuss many of the cases that I can do because they do use them for grading. But there was one that was not used for grading. It was an experience of the students having to give a patient bad news, terminal news, which is not something you want to learn, have your first experience be in real life, right? So doing it in a situation where I was portraying a patient that they would have to give that news to. I do remember one doctor, and I wish I could remember his name or what specialty he was in, because they would come in different groups, and so they all had different preceptors. But he made sure to tell his students that, like, you've got to, being able to give a patient hope, even when they've got such a terrible diagnosis of this, it's like, you have no idea how helpful that can be. You don't want to give them false hope, but you want to, they're still alive and they still have some life to live. And miracles are possible. So you want to be there for them. You don't just want to like shut the door and be like, nope, you're already dead, and then just walk out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And also because so many people believe that what the doctor says is gold, it's written in stone, that's it. They believe it because they don't have their own information about this. They may not have the capacity or ability to do their own research or to have any other avenues of information. So in their mind, and especially older generations and things like that, what the doctor says is right. So if the doctor is not someone who's going to give them that space of hope, we've all heard of people who have been told you got 6 months to die, and boom, off they go. That's it, after 6 months. And I don't want to bash doctors either, because they're doing an amazing job, but they are trained for a specific purpose. They're trained to diagnose, they're trained to administer drugs, and then of course there are branches of that where they're trained for surgery and stuff like that. But this is what they're trained to do, and they're doing that, and they're very good at it. And you really have to admire those that also are, actually, let's admire all of them, because they have a damn tough job, because they are diagnosing patients that with
anything, with everything, right?
Yeah, but also that are not always effective. So they're seeing people coming back, and I've heard of cases where they're frustrated because what they're doing doesn't work, but they don't have any other options. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is those doctors that are open-minded, that get to that point where, man, this is just not working. What else? What else is out there? And then they start exploring and looking for other things. And we've all heard of doctors who are, have gone into other fields that are a little more alternative or something, to start opening up that integration between the two, to start helping clients get better answers. But in the long run, it is there is an aspect where this is kind of client driven, like we have to be responsible for our own health. And if we're not getting what we need from a doctor or even from a healer, we have to open up what else is possible. We have to look at the bigger picture. But we also require the support of organizations like medical centers and government, what's the word? I'm just going to say organizations. I'm not quite sure what the word I want, but who help to facilitate the integration of all of these programs and modalities, and start to bring things together, because we've had a very limited perspective. Let's start opening it all up, guys. Let's really start looking at all the possibilities so the whole person can be treated, because doctors are not going to look at things like past lives or, but this is all energy that is connected to the body. And there are many ways to heal that. Like we've heard of spontaneous healings through different things people have done because they change their mindset. And this brings us back to what you were saying about, the giving people hope. If you give people hope, they can create anything. Like, we are amazing beings. We can turn anything around if we believe that we can, and if we're given the support to do that.
Yeah. Even if we don't know what it looks like. Right.
Exactly.
We and that we can create our own reality.
Yeah. We often don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of the time we're just winging it.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much for everybody who has been watching and joining us live. If there's any questions or comments that you have, now would be a great time to type them into the chat, because we're about 24 minutes in now, so we're probably going to start wrapping up. So while
we just share about what we've got coming up, while if people want to put any questions in the chat. So I know you have an amazing mastermind coming up. Mastermind.
It's a mentorship.
Mentorship. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't have words today.
That's quite all right.
Starting with an M.
Yes, it's a great alliteration, and maybe I will at some point have a mastermind. But yeah, right now it's a mentorship. So it's about your money mindset. So recently I have been working on my own money stuff. And I've got a lot of resources. I've done a lot of group programs and whatnot. But the things that are coming up for me now are very unique to me, and it's really helpful that I sometimes work with other healers or work with myself, and I thought this would be really great and fun for me to work with people one-on-one about their money stuff, right? Because a lot of us, we've done the stuff, we know what's got to be done, or at least those common denominator things, but we're still seeing some blocks. And so let's actually just put down the time and do it. So this is a 6-week program with me doing one-on-ones, theta healing sessions. So we'll do 6 weeks, 1 hour each week. And we're just going to work on your money stuff. So, it keeps you accountable. You get to choose when you show up on the calendar. We're hopefully be able to see some, so it's a short enough time that you can make that commitment, but we'll able to see some shifts in terms of, what's showing up in your money, what's affecting your income in terms of your mindset. Because sometimes it gets really weird when you go down and you do the digging and it doesn't really have anything to do with money at all, but money is the symptom and how it's showing up. So, so you can see more information for that on my website, ColleenO'Brien.com. That's Colleen with an A, O'Brien with an E. And of course, if you have any questions, there's also a contact us page on there if you want to, have a chat, do a little Q&A before you commit to it. But it really is, if you want to work with me, this is a great opportunity to do it and to do it over time. So I would encourage you to consider it, because I think it's going to be amazing. So thank you.
I'm sure it will be amazing. Having had sessions with Colleen myself, I would definitely recommend that. She is amazing. And it's something like that, giving you the opportunity to work over a period of time with her would definitely create an amazing shift. So definitely have a look at that, guys. Yeah, it does sound great, doesn't it, Catherine? All right, so what have I got going on? Secret Healers Business, the book, guys. Check it out on Amazon or on my website, secrethealersbusiness.com. This is a book it's not only for healers, it's for any type of spiritual entrepreneur, anyone who is wanting to do something that they love in the world. There's little snippets of my journey of going into that field of healing and some of the challenges, etc., that I faced along the way. So I share a lot of, hopefully fun stories, but also a lot of information and tips, etc., for you. And from that, there is a 2-day Secret Healers Business Masterclass that will be coming up. That's probably not till November, like mid-November, but I'm still confirming dates, and that's online. And another offshoot from the book is the Being Seen Masterclass. Now, I don't even have info on my website about this yet. It will be sort of going up online later. So this is a little sneak peek. That will be a 1-day online class. And we are just going to dive into all of the blocks that people have to do with being seen, whether it's, posting something on social media, whether it's actually having photos taken, whether it's speaking in front of people, and just putting yourself out there in the world and doing what you love in the world. So we are going to be really dynamically shifting lots of blocks and stuff with that. So I'll share more about that as they come up. But meanwhile, if you'd like to know a bit more about the Secret Healers Business stuff, buy the book and you'll get the goss. And thank you, everybody, so much for being here. Looks like we don't have any comments or questions. So I think we're almost ready to wrap it up, Colleen.
Yes, I think so. This was great. This was an amazing episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, whether you're joining us live or listening to the replay. We love that you keep showing up. So, and what is our topic for next? And that's the other thing. Our next episode in 2 weeks.
Oh yes.
We are going to be changing the time for one of our time zones. So we're going to be meeting earlier in my time zone, Eastern Daylight Time. We're still going to be at 9:45 in Australian time, but you guys are actually changing your clocks, which is why we're changing the time. So it's going to be Australian daylight time, right? You're going to daylight savings time. You're springing forward.
Yeah. So it'll still be 9:45, and that's in South Australian. So ACST. And then if you're in the other states, you'll adjust a little either way. But if you're in the States, you will have a little bit more of a,
right.
It will be a shift.
Yeah, it's going to be an hour earlier here in the States.
Yeah.
And then, of course, wherever else you're joining from,
From the Philippines, I don't know what time it is over there, but it will be different in 2 weeks' time.
Yes. So, but you'll see that on the event as well, and you'll be able to get those updates on our Facebook page. We wanted to give you a heads up, so that you can shift your schedule accordingly if you're going to come join us live. So yes.
And heads up on next week, next episode, which is all about time. And Colleen is the master of time, nicknamed Dr. Strange.
Real life Dr. Strange. Yes.
Yeah. So definitely jump into that one. I can't wait to be part of that. And we have lots to share all about time. We're going to be talking about divine timing, future readings, all sorts of stuff.
Yep, energetic time travel, it's gonna be fun. Yes, and I didn't even realize when I was talking about our time change. What a great segue that our next topic is going to be
about myself. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you hanging out with us, and for those who watch later, we're grateful for you as well. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yep, awesome. Bye-bye, everybody.